Good morning.
Good morning.
And we would love to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Niagara on this beautiful service. Well, we hope it's going to be a beautiful service on this beautiful day, March the 1st. I'm not going to say beware the Ides of March. Not going to say it. Wouldn't be prudent. But we're so grateful that it is the 1st of March because February hasn't been too much fun. We do so because, of course, we want the weather to improve, and it looks like we're, in spite of the groundhog, we're headed in the right direction. To begin our service, I'm going to share with you opening words, very short, but very, in my opinion, appropriate and profound for the times we live in. It comes to us from Project Plowshares. Lead me from death to life, from falsehood to truth. Lead me from despair to hope, from fear to trust. Lead me from hate to love, from war to peace. Let peace fill our hearts, our world, our universe. Amen. We now come to that portion of our service. If you'll open your hymn, I've always called this a hymn cover, a bulletin cover. There you will find our chalice lighting words. I think I'm okay. Kind of, maybe, sort of. Okay. And let us pray. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. If you'll turn now in your hymnal as we prepare for our responsive reading to hymn number 32, as we sing, Now Thank We All Our God. Our responsive reading today comes from the Wisdom of Solomon. It is number 644 in your gray hymnal. And if you'd please open the gray hymnal to 644, and I will begin, and if you'll follow in tandem, please. I called on God, and the spirit of wisdom came to me. Neither did I liken to her any priceless gem, because all gold is but a little sand in her sight, and silver will be accounted as clay before her. All good things come to me along with her, and in her hands uncounted wealth. I learned without guile, and I impart without grudging. Thank you. Okay. We now come to that portion of our service, our joys and our sorrows. First off, obviously, and you don't need me to tell you, nor even remind you, you read the news, you're on the web and all of the rest of it, it would appear that we have made a choice that many will find to be exceedingly confusing, if not unacceptable, and that is the choice of violence and warfare. We continue to engage in our ignorance and our arrogance in so many ways that it is sometimes beyond human comprehension. And yet we gather as brothers and sisters to acknowledge that as a deep sorrow and pray to, if it is to the God of our own understanding, he, she, they, I am that which I am, the title is not important, or whether it be just to the, if you will, higher consciousness of the universe, that somehow, some way, we begin to understand that we must find quieter and gentler ways to eliminate conflict, and perhaps the best place to begin is within ourselves. And I have a candle of great joy. I light this in deep gratitude because I'm not dead. About a week ago Friday, I was in a parking lot, and the ground was as dry as this floor, no moisture, 92.7% flat. And I was walking along the parking lot to get to my automobile. I had a piece of paper in my hand, which was a script for blood work I needed for a different doctor. And the wind took a gust and blew the paper out of my hand. The smart money says, like the movie Indiana Jones, "Let it go, Indy, let it go." Well, Indy didn't let it go. He lunged for it. I proceeded to fall. This hand, which has 2 broken fingers and a broken wrist, broke the fall. This hand here, which just has some minor lacerations, continued to break the fall. But my face, as you can see, my pretty face, took the rest of it. They took me to hospital because I was just planning on wiping a warm washcloth over me and going home for lunch. They convinced me that was not prudent. And after a bunch of x-rays, it was determined what was all wrong and what was necessary. But the good news, no concussion, no breakage that would take a ridiculous period of time. There's no broken bones on my face, which I'm grateful for because that's very painful. And so I am deeply grateful, not just to be alive, but that I will make a complete recovery without having to go through anything like surgeries and so forth. I can't tell you how important it is, and it has nothing to do with whether you're 6 or 60 or 86. Paying attention to where you are and what you're doing is so incredibly vital, because all it takes, as you can see, is one split second of inattention, and it could have been way worse, but again, deeply grateful that it is not. So without any other ado, by the way, some of you folks have sent me notes and things because they saw me on Facebook going, "Ooh, what happened to you?" It was tender, it was moving, I enjoyed it. But anyway, by virtue of people having seen and so forth, I'm deeply grateful for not just the concern, but the positive energy. Call it prayer, call it positive energy. Again, I don't care. I believe that positive energy has an impact on our psyche and our physiology, and I'm feeling even after just a week, so much better. I'm not supposed to drive for a couple weeks, so my first week is over, and I'm thinking there might be more than a second week of no driving. My dear friend Antone, who's been so good to me and so wonderful, not as good and wonderful as my wife, I want that to be perfectly clear, because she'll check. But we were driving down here today, and I said, life is interesting. I said, what do you mean? He goes, from the moment I had this accident, I've had pain, but when you would kind of expect it. I said, but I've never had, any real aches or anything. And I said, and we're 5 minutes away from the church, and for the first time, my 2 fingers and my wrist are throbbing. And I said, there is something unfair about this, but I digress. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to share a joy or a concern? Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of on this beautiful March 1st, it comes to my mind that when I was reflecting on what to share with you today, a number of weeks ago, that we had either, I'm thinking, a board meeting, or yes, it was actually a board meeting in my congregation, and we had worked for probably 2 hours, and we were all very tired, and some of the ideas were being recycled, if I can say it that way. And someone popped up, he says, we're spending so much time on the minutia, the small stuff. He says, haven't you ever seen that bumper sticker, don't sweat the small stuff? And of course we have. That's an old expression. And of course, it also is reflected to some degree, depending how you interpret it. The demons are in the details. And of course, for some people, that basically means you'd better sweat the small stuff, because all of the little gremlins, and if you want to call them demons or whatever, are contained in the details, and we've got to make sure that we, become, and we used to hear this all the time in school, they've kind of let up on this, they tell me, we all have to become detail-oriented, that if we do not sweat the small stuff, if we do not pay attention to the details, we shall be in trouble. We will make greater errors in so many ways and so many levels, that in that philosophy it is infinitely vital to sweat all the small stuff. And then you meet, and then you meet people who are not inclined to sweat the small stuff, not inclined to worry about the gremlins or the demons in the details. Their venue, their abode, if you will, is the big picture. And these are the idea folk, the idea people. They're the folks that sometimes sit in boardrooms, and it's their job to come up with the big picture. This is what it's going to look like when we're done. Well, how are we going to do it? I don't know. That's your job, is often said. And so we have that dichotomy where we appear to actually probably need both. We need the people who are willing to look at the minutia, look at the details, look at all those subtleties that interconnect and impact each other, so that we can truly understand a situation, whether it be to solve a problem or to create something better than we'd ever had before, cure a disease, fix an architectural issue that nobody could ever fix before. The people who are incredibly detail-oriented, those are the folks you send on those missions. And yet, like I said a moment ago, the big picture folks are important too, because they're the visionaries. They see what's ahead. They don't necessarily know how we're going to get there, but on the other hand, they have enough foresight and imagination where it's ironic how often these, quote, big ideas become factual, become reality, because of the visionary ability of these individuals. I don't know how many of you watch science fiction. My father, God rest his soul, was not a science fiction fan. He relegated this to much of what his son studied, and he always put it under the umbrella of hocus pocus. To him, it was magical thinking. And I one time read an article by Gene Roddenberry, who had written about Star Trek. And he really did a beautiful article, and the article basically reflected that an enormous amount of so-called science fiction does become science fact. That these harebrained schemes, these incredible ideas, all of this stuff, you need people who can pop up with this and find out just how far they can take it. Now, if you're anything like me, I love history. Love it, love it, love it. But I love obscura. That's the word that people use, the obscure history. The history that nobody but reads but me. No, but that very few people read. And you read stories about people who try to invent this, that, and the other thing. And you see a lot of good old-fashioned snake oil salesmen who legitimately believed that their brilliant idea could come to fruition, only to have it come to naught, to, as the British would say, come to smash. But on the other hand, you do have that if you can have those groups of people meet up, if you can have those people get together and engage in that visionary sense, and also the people who can then take, and in that, I'll use another old expression, build a better mousetrap, some amazing things can occur. And I look at, we spend a lot of time, and we were just informed here at Joys of Concerned. I too am so depressed about what happened, where we've, as the minister of Turkey said, he decided to hone in on the Israelis. He said the Israelis weren't going to stop until they turned Palestine into a children's graveyard. And we get all that stuff. You don't need me to reiterate it, but the point is, when that happens, you sometimes end in the worst psychological condition you can possibly have. It isn't depression. It isn't anxiety. It isn't even that, they used to call it that very light depression, melancholy. It's despair. Despair says it isn't good. It isn't going to get better. It can never get better. Prepare for the end. That's despair. People who commit and successfully accomplish the act of suicide, I would say easily 9.9% of the time, if I can use 10 as a baseline, are in despair. They have no sense of hope. They have no sense of, it could get better. It might get better. We've got to keep trying. Let's look at the big picture. Let's look at some of the small stuff. And it is that despair that ultimately ends progress, ends, for many, the joy of living, or even the ability to survive challenges enough to once again experience the joy of living. So we have so many people now, especially as we are in this period of human history, who seem to have figured out on some level that it's over. People are already planning World War III. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm not quite ready to plan World War III. One of my main reasons, though, is that Albert Einstein said after World War III, our next war will be fought with sticks and stones. That's one of my reasons for not wanting to even contemplate that so-called possibility. But it's the people who are, and I go back to talking about when I mentioned history, the people who are not likely or not willing, I should say, to engage in despair and continue in many parts of the world to work slowly, gradually, as optimistically as they possibly can work, recognizing that the odds, whatever that thing called the odds, and I'm saying odds metaphorically, because odds many times is used, obviously mathematically. You can always figure out the odds. Go to the casino, there's a couple of thousand people in there figuring out the odds even as we speak, but not too well. Anyway, but the metaphoric odds, going against the odds and doing little things. What would be considered the small stuff, whether that would be a kindness, whether that would be a smile to another person who looks like they could use somebody to smile at them and make eye contact so that they know that somebody acknowledges their existence. And in reading the various history books that I've read, and some of them, of course, have been about some of the most horrible periods of human history, like the Holocaust, for example, you always find the individuals who will just not quit, who will not fall into despair, who will continue to do the little things over and over and over again. There have been times that some of those people, it's cost them literally their lives. Other people survive it and are willing to talk about it and are willing to encourage others that we have no other choice but to continue to move forward, and not with the platitudinal, with a smile on our face and a song in our heart, doing an Ethel Merman, everything's coming up roses. Acknowledge what you've got going, what we've got going, and look for the good. Look for the good. I got to tell you a couple of quick stories. I hope that will illustrate this. When I fell, and I think, I don't know who took the picture, but I don't know why they decided I needed to be on Facebook that way. It's not my best side. But they did that. Anyway, as I'm going into the emergency ward, walking, because I never lost consciousness, which was a very good thing, I walked past a park bench that was set up for people to sit in, to rest, just in front of the emergency doors. And as I'm walking through the door, I noticed this lady sitting, not that far as this young lady is sitting across from me. Now, first off, the woman, you could tell, bless her soul, cannot afford good dentistry. She might have had 2 teeth in her head. She looked like she hadn't eaten in a while. And yes, you guessed it, which of course is how things sometimes happen in people's lives. She was smoking on a cigarette because that was somehow giving her comfort. And then I noticed something that I didn't notice upon my first glance. One of her legs was missing. One of her legs was missing. And she had this prosthetic that looked more like, Captain Ahab, a peg leg, but obviously not in that same, style, but it was a very cheap, I call it a junk prosthesis because it couldn't have been comfortable. But here's this woman, and she looks at me and she says, "Are you okay?" I go, and I'm thinking, "Honey, I'm doing beautiful compared to what you're living through." And she says, I said, "No, I'm hanging in there." I said, "I got to go in there and they can fix me up. I'm a little broken, but I think I'll be all right." And she's, "Oh, God bless you. Do you need to sit down? Let me help you." And I'm like, and I go, "No, honey, please." I said, I'm really okay. I said, "I'm going to go in a second." And she says, "Well, I'm going to pray for you and God bless you. And I think this is going to work out fine. You just have a really better day, won't you?" I looked her in the eyes, which of course, poetically speaking, are the windows of the soul. I saw, I don't know, call it love, call it spirit. It was an honesty and a joy that I had obviously not, at least in memory, seen. And it just hit me that in spite of everything she had gone through, is going through, and even potentially could go through, she made a choice not to keep her sunny side up, but to at least offer some kind of hope, some kind of gladness, some kind of thing other than what I think she would have been in, total despair, to a complete stranger. And I've noticed that too when we walk in our day-to-day lives. Have you ever seen it? We're either looking at that phone, or people are walking around like they've been kicked in the stomach. And perhaps some of them, God forbid, I don't mean this physically, but life has not seemed to have gotten a whole bunch easier the past few years. And though you meet that singular soul, that singular person who is willing to say, "Enough, I choose to strive to be joyful. And I may not be perfectly joyful. I may not be perfectly have the ability to not sweat the small stuff. And I may not be able to see the big picture. But I am right here, right now, and I choose to be better rather than bitter. And if I can share that betterness, that betterment with the next person, even if it's only one person that day, it improves the quality and the character of the life we live. There's a lot of people out there who are waiting for all kinds of, I call it man, myth, and magic, miracles and revelations and space people coming from New Jersey or wherever to save us and teach us how we're not doing this right. And all that work's been done. All that work's been done. We are spiritual beings, if I may be so bold, who have on some level chosen to have a human experience. And so if we choose, if we want, for example, to be loved, we have to be willing to love. If we want to solve a problem, we have to be willing to invest ourselves to the extent that we become absorbed by that and then hopefully be either the soul or part of the solution to that problem. I've done it, for example, in my own personal life with world hunger. Nothing makes me angrier than to know that every human being on this planet right this moment could be completely, fully well-fed, and we have chosen not to let that happen. That's the truth. So what do? Can I feed the entire planet, one person at a time? Well, once in a while I try that route. It's not very successful. But where I can, how I can, I try to make a little bit of a difference, whether it's a donation to a fund that works diligently to eradicate world hunger, or whether it be something personal I can do. I've taken people on the street once in a while and say, come on, you look like you need a cheeseburger, you know? And it's the same thing with people who are, I have a dear friend of mine. This woman is probably she's in my age group. That's all she does is take care of animals, specifically cats. She spends all of her money on cats. People go, she's crazy. Yeah. But she's also one of the most loving, giving, caring human beings I've ever met, because she sees the value in those small creatures that nobody thinks more of than maybe she, and does whatever she can. People look at it like, well, she's losing everything. No, she's not. Where it counts, she feels good. She feels good about herself, her relationship with the universe, and most of all, her relationship with those beings that she calls her friends, her fur children. Now, at the end of her earthly existence, people will say, yeah, she was a nice person, well-educated, but, a little bit crazy. And I would be the first to say, nope, not crazy at all. She made a choice, and the choice worked for her because it brought her satisfaction. It brought her peace, and it brought her the ability to look beyond the despair of that situation and feel that she has made some progress and become part of the solution, rather than turning away and allowing the problem to continue to exacerbate and ultimately to consume more victims. We come here to be reminded of such things. We don't care. At least I don't. I don't know how you feel about it. I don't care about an afterlife per se. Oh, I've got all kinds of theories, beliefs, and ideas, But my idea is, and it's very similar, by the way, a lot of people don't know this, to the Judaic or the Jewish concept of spirituality. I've a dear friend, he said, we in Judaism do not talk about life after death very much. And I go, I know. I said, I've been fascinated. Why don't you? He said, because regardless of what our situation or circumstances are, and if there is or isn't a so-called life after so-called death, our responsibility, our commitment, our, if you will, mandate from the Almighty is to make this life right here and right now as perfect and as reasonable for every being that we come in contact with. I go, boy, I've got a bunch of Buddhists and I got a bunch of Unitarian Universalists that would like to talk to you because I don't think they've ever heard that before. But that's the truth. That's the truth. So we come here to hear stories about people who do it different, who do it better in their own unique way, and that we as a spiritual community want to strive to be, again, that loving kindness and empathy and diversity and all of those things that have always been in religion associated with things God does, but we're not good at it, so we're just going to kind of plod along. And our theology, our philosophy says, no, we are the expression of that which might be called God on earth. We choose to be kind when others may not be kind. We choose to be loving when others choose not to be loving. And we will not judge the others. We will not condemn the others. We will open our arms and say, today you may not be ready to do it the way we do it, and you may never be ready to do it the way we do it, but you know what? In spite of ourselves, we're going to stand on the side of love. We're going to stand and embrace each other so that at the end of any given day, we can go to bed and close our eyes and say, I feel good about myself. And I'm grateful to have given it today as good a shot as I've ever given it. And tomorrow will be better and then some. I thank you, and I bid you peace. Our closing hymn is hymn 101, and it is, I think, an appropriate hymn. It is Abide With Me.
How we just do the first and the last.
First and last verse, hymn 101. If you'll please allow me to do the closing benediction, we'll have our extinguishing the chalice, and then finally we will proceed to announcements. Great Spirit of life, if we said we understood you in any way, shape, or form, we'd be lying to ourselves and to others.
We know that there is a power throughout the universe displayed. We call that power love. We call that power justice. We call it empathy. We call it loving kindness. And we commit ourselves individually and collectively to that power. Not for our own self-interest, though indeed we too want peace, joy, and abundance. We commit ourselves to that power that we may give it unto others when we have opportunity to do so. Many consider these things that we consider irrelevant. They call it the small stuff. Others consider it too big to even comprehend and therefore not to even bother with. And yet I stand here knowing without any possible doubt that when we call it the small stuff, it's all small stuff. And that even as we approach that minutia and we strive to look upon it as if we do it compartmentally, if we try to do it a little bit at a time, one person at a time or two people at a time, we are going to be part of a tremendous revival of the human condition so that we can participate in the gladness and the joy, not of life eternal, but of life here and now. So we go forth out into the world and yeah, we're confused. Yeah, we don't know what we're doing. And that doesn't matter because we do know that as we open our hearts and our minds to a power that is greater than ourselves and ask it once and only once to please abide with me, that we know that power will abide within us, around and about us, so that we can go forth out into the world to do the work of that power and therefore have what has eluded humankind since the very, very beginning. Peace on earth, goodwill, or God's will toward all humankind. Amen. Inside the hymnal cover, you will find our chalice extinguishing words. And please say these words with us. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Amen. Announcements, announcements, announcements. Okay. Well, we're going to have goodies after the service, so please stay with us for refreshments and whatnot. We like whatnot. It's kind of like whatchamacallit, but whatnot is good too. We used to have years ago in the soup kitchen I worked, Monday was, people said, what's for lunch? Musco. Musco? Yep. You open up the refrigerator and go, that must go, that must go, that must go, and it all end up in a nice stew, and it did go. Anyway, so we do invite you to please stay with us for fellowship and refreshment. I will be with you one more time with feeling on March the 15th. That'll be, of course, Sunday, March the 15th. And I'll be very happy to be with you that day as well. And just as a comment, I deeply appreciate the compliment about my steadfastness, but again, you have no idea how much good you have done me just being able to be with you, to touch your energy, to be with you. Yeah, I've felt pretty crappy, but I feel pretty darn good right now, and I think that feeling is going to stay with me. And you're to blame. So, that's all the announcements I have, unless anyone has anything else. Maybe that? Nope. Okay.
Okay. I didn't know what to sing, so here we go. Look at me. I'm as helpless as a kitten up a tree. the sound